Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to look at a previous exam paper and we're going to focus on the chapter of algebraic expressions. So I would like to advise you to go to my YouTube channel and watch the playlist of Algebra grade 10s before you can start to look at this video, so that whatever that I'm going to discuss here makes sense. So without any waste of time, the first question says that consider the following list of numbers and then answer the questions that follow. So we have all these different numbers inside the column. So my advice is that if you are given different numbers like this, please just put them in your calculator and simplify them so that you can really identify which group does each number falls under. So now if you put a square root of 60 over 15, you will get the answer is 2. So but now if you put the square root of negative 27, you will get an error on your calculator. So this is not applicable. Then if you put a square root of 12, you are going to get an irrational number, which is 3.46 and lot of numbers after a comma. So if you put in the cube root of negative 8, the answer that you get is negative 2. But now if you look at the numbers that follows, they are just normal rational numbers, so we can just leave them as they are. So we have simplified the ones that are inside the set so that we don't get confused. So let's start now with the first question. The first question says, write down any non-real number in the list. So now you need to know what is a non-real number. So a non-real number is any number that when you put in your calculator, it gives you undefined. So the answer that gave us undefined is square root of 27. So the square root of negative 27 is going to be our non-real number. The second question says, between which two rational numbers does the irrational number lie? Show all the relevant workings in order to obtain full marks. So now, you see now, they want us to determine which is the irrational number on our numbers and then get the two rational numbers that are next to that irrational number. So if we look at our numbers, the only irrational number that we have here is square root of 12. So if you know a definition of a rational number is any number that can be written as a fraction, and an irrational number is any number that cannot be written as a fraction. And then you see an irrational number by lot of numbers after a comma that don't even repeat. So this is the only one that we have, which is the square root of 12. So the square root of 12 is our irrational number. So now how do you show now the two rational numbers that this irrational number is in between? You are going to first use your calculator to say, now what is the square root of 12? We already know that the square root of 12 is the same thing as 3.46. And therefore you know that the number that is rational and is less than 3.46 is just going to be 3. And then the number that is greater than that is going to be 4. So now you have identified the two rational numbers that this irrational number is in between. So you can also express that in terms of square roots. So now you're just going to say what is 3 squared. 3 squared is just going to be 9. And then if you put it in the square root, so this is still the same thing. The square root of 9 is going to give you 3. Then now what is 4 squared? 4 squared is 16. So if you put that in your what? In your calculator, you're going to get 4. So that is how you get the rational numbers that are in between an irrational number. So in this case, you have already also showed how you worked out your answers. So therefore, you will get your full 3 marks. So now the next question says that convert the recurring decimal to a rational fraction in a form of a over b, but b must not be equal to 0. Okay, so now let's look at what we have in our bracket, in our numbers. Which number is a recurring number? So now we see a recurring number by a dot at the top of the number. So this is the only recurring number that we have. So now you must know which numbers, which groups does these numbers fall in. Because if you don't know that, how are you going to answer these kind of problems? So we also know that, okay, our recurring number is what? Is 3.4, which is dot like that. So if you have a dot like that, this means you have 3.4444 up to infinity. And then this number like this, we call it a rational number because you can write it as a fraction. So, but now the question say, write this as what? As a rational fraction. So how do you do that? How do you do that? I have done a video on how to do this, but now let's go through it together. You're going to let x to be equal whatever that you have. So in this case, we have 3.44444 as x. We know this continues to infinity. And then what you do is that you're going to multiply the x by 10. So it's going to be what? It's going to be 10x here. And then what you do on this side, you must also do on that side. So you're going to multiply this side by 10 here. So if you multiply it by 10, what you get is going to be 34.444 moving like that. So do you see that if you multiply it by 10, 4 moves past the comma and then it becomes 34.444. So the reason is that you want to have the same numbers after a comma so that when you minus the two numbers, these decimals will cancel out, will just disappear. So how can we do that? We are going to say now 10 minus x. So you're going to say 10x minus x. And then what you do on this side, you also do on that side. So you're going to say this number at the bottom, which is 34.444 moving like that, minus 3.444 moving like that. So do you see now when you minus 34 and 3, all these decimals will minus out completely and then you're just going to have no decimals. And then the answer that you will get is just going to be what? 34 minus 3, that is going to be 31. And then in this side, you're just saving 10x minus x, which is the same thing as 9x. So if you divide both sides by 9, the value of x is what? Is 31 over 9. So now this is the same thing as this, but in a form of a fraction. So that is how you would answer that problem. So now let us move to the next question, which is 1.1.4. And the question says what? Add the two real numbers closest to each other, but not equal to each other. So now they want what? They want two real numbers that are closest to each other, but not what? But not equal to each other. So now let's look at our numbers here. So this is our numbers here. So which numbers are real numbers? So we know that, okay, real numbers are just numbers that when we put them in a calculator, they exist. So all these numbers are real numbers. So now which numbers are closest to each other? Okay. So now if we look at this here, 2 and negative 2, I'm not sure if they are closest to each other. But now if we also look at what, if we look at this 3.46 is closest to 2, is really closest to 2. And then also this value here of, let me just say, negative 4 over 3 is the same thing as what? As 1.3 recurring. 1.3 recurring is really close to this. Okay? So let's try to read the question again and understand what do they really want. They say now, add the two real numbers closest to each other. Two real numbers that are closest to each other, but not equal to each other. So now the one that are really closest that I see is these two here. because those are real numbers. They did not say, did not talk about rational numbers. They just said real numbers. And then all the numbers that when you put on your calculator, they give you a valid answer. That is going to be real numbers. So these are the two real numbers that are closest to each other. And then also the second closest will be what? Will be 2 and 3.46. Okay? So we're going to say what? We're going to say now this negative 1.3 and negative 1.4, they are closest to each other. So the numbers that are closest to each other is what? Is negative 1.3 recurring and negative 1.4. So these are really closest to each other. So now the question says we must do what? We must add them. So you just put plus in between them, and then you just put that in your calculator. And then the answer that we get is negative 2.733. So this is 3 recurring. You can just say negative 2.73, and then you just put that dot there. So that is how you would add the closest real numbers. They said real numbers. So if they said rational numbers, you're going to look at, for example, you see now the numbers that are rational here is the numbers like this ones here, 2 and negative 2, and then also this is rational. This is rational, that is rational. Okay, maybe if they said integers, so if they said integers, you're only putting whole numbers because integers are whole numbers, so you're going to put 2 and negative 2. But in this case, the question just said real numbers, so real numbers is all the numbers. So these are the ones that are very closest to each other. Okay, so now if we move on to the next question, they say now a set of number is represented by a number line below. So they say use an inequality to describe the following set of numbers. Okay, so if we see this set of numbers represented by this, we can clearly see now we have all of the numbers in between negative 3 and 4. So this is going to be real numbers. So now remember, if you represent real numbers in what? In an interval notation, and they are in between each other, so you're just going to put x in between, and then you're going to say the smaller one on this side, so which is negative 3, and the bigger one on this side, which is 4. But now we can see now on the side of 4, we have equals to, because the dot is what? Is shaded. So you must also have the equal sign there. And that is how you represent the inequality. And then this inequality, remember, is for real numbers. Okay? And then now, they say now, what is the smallest integer? So now you see now, they say integer in the set of numbers. So now remember now, an integer is a positive and a negative whole number. So now they say now, what is the smallest integer? So if we look at our numbers here, so what is going to be the smallest integer here? So the smallest integer will be what? Will be this negative 2. These are the only integers we have, because those are the whole numbers we have. The smallest one is going to be this one, which is negative 2. But now you just write it as it is, which is the cube root of negative 8. So that is going to be our smallest integer. So you just write it as what? Cube root of negative 8. Or you can just also say, oh, this is just the same thing as negative 2. And that is going to be our smallest integer in the whole number set. Okay, and then the last question says, okay, I'm sorry about that. So is this question here referring to the set of numbers that we had there, or is it referring to this interval that we have here? If this is referring to this here, because I can see now this is part of what? Of 1.2.2. So if that is part of 1.2.2, we are going to say now, okay, look at our answer here. So the smallest integer that we have, remember this one is not included here, is going to still be what? Negative 2. So the answer is still negative 2 there. Okay, so it's just negative 2. We look at the smallest one like that. Remember now, this question did not say on the number set. They talked about this interval here. So yeah, that is how we'll answer it. And the last question says, express the interval notation They say we must express this in an interval notation. So an interval notation is whereby we say we have what? The smallest number, -3. We don't have equal sign there. So we're just going to put the bracket like this. Then we say now on this other side, we have 4 there, but we have equal sign. So we just put the square bracket. And then that will be our interval notation. Okay. So that is how we answer the first question. So now the second question that comes, it says now factorize the following fully. So now we need to know how to factorize different types of numbers. So now if we look at the first term here, we can factorize it by taking out a common factor. So now a common factor is what? Is going to be between the coefficients is 3, and then now between the variable is x. Okay, if you don't know how to do that, again, I have the videos where I have explained how to factorize different types of factorizing, and you can also get some practice on those videos. So now after you take out the common factor, you're going to say now the first term divided by the common factor. So the 3x cubed will divide by 3x. So the 3x will cancel out, and then 1x will cancel the other x there, and then you're going to be left with 2. So the answer that you get here is just going to be x squared. Okay, remember now you don't have to show this on your calculations there. This is 3x, and then what we have there is just x squared. And then you say what? You say the second term divided by that. So it's going to be -12 divided by 3. That's going to give us -4. And the x and x will cancel out. Okay? So now, it is very much important that you identify this is a difference of two squares. Because now you have not factorized fully. You have taken out the common factor, that's true. But now you still have to factorize fully because this is a difference of two squares. But now, how do you factorize difference of two squares? Remember, you say now, okay, we still have 3x there, but to simplify or factorize this at the bracket here, you want to open two brackets. Then you're just going to say the x squared is just going to be x, and then now the square root of what? Of 4 is just going to be 2. You write x and 2 there, and then you put plus or minus. And then this will be what? This will be the answer to the problem. This is factorized fully. If you just leave it here, they will give you 1 mark. You need to also factorize this because it can be factorized. So now 2.2, they say now factorize the following trinomial. So what do you do when you factorize trinomial? You open two brackets. And then now the first step, you say now, how can I write this 2x squared? I can write 2x squared by saying what? By 2x multiplied with x. And then now secondly, you say now what are the factors of the last term? That when I subtract them, they give me -5. So but now what are the factors of the last term? Is 1 and 3. So because you have a coefficient of x squared, that means now the coefficient of x squared here, it must multiply with one of the factors. So that when you add these two factors, they give you -5. So now we can clearly see now if we multiply this by 2 here, we're just going to get 1 and 6. And therefore, if we say 6 minus 5, that is going to give us what? It's going to give us 5. So this 3 here is the one that is to be multiplied with the 2. So it's going to sit on the not the same side as 2. So because it has to multiply like that. Remember, things that are on the other side of the bracket multiplies with things on the other side of the bracket. So now the 1 here will just be there. And therefore the sign is negative. That means the sign are going to be different. So the bigger number will take the sign of the middle term, and then this one will just be positive. So you have fully factorized that. Again, we have videos on YouTube that will help you to practice this thoroughly. Many problems on YouTube, many problems that can get you to a confidence that you understand how to factorize trinomials with coefficients of x squared. So if we move on to the next problem, what we have is what? Is factorizing. But now we see we have 4 terms. So that means maybe this is a factorizing by grouping pairs. So first thing we need to check which pairs must we group. We can see now, okay, on this pair here we have y and y. And then on this pair here we have a common factor which is 2. So we can group them like that. And then we say now what is the common factor on this first group here? We can see the common factor is just y. So we're going to take y as a common factor. And we say now 5y divided by y, that is going to be 5x. And then you say what? -3y divided by y, that is going to be -3. So we have factorized the first pair. So we move on now to the second pair. To say now, the common factor in the second pair is positive 2. So you're going to take out positive 2. Remember, when you take out a common factor, you must put that sign of positive there. Okay, this is positive 2. We open the bracket, and then we say 10x divided by 2. That's going to be 5x. And therefore, negative 6 divided by 2, that's going to be negative 3. After we do that, we will see that, okay, what is in the brackets is actually common in both the terms. So that's going to be our common factor. So we are going to take it out as a common factor, 5x minus 3. And then we open the bracket. You remember we cancel out. We say this thing divided by that. And then the 5x minus 3 will cancel out. And we will be left with y. The very same thing will happen here. We're going to say this divided by the common factor. And the 5x minus 3 will cancel out. And we will be left with positive 2. So this will be the final answer to our problem. Yes. Okay. So now, the last problem of factorizing that we have here, we have to identify that what do we have here? We can see now we have a cube here. We also have to identify is this a cube here. If we have two cubes, irrespective if we have plus or minus, if we have two cubes, therefore we can factorize them. So now I can see now this is a cube here and this is a cube. So what do? We open a smaller bracket and a bigger bracket. So we are going to say now, okay, what is the cube root of this first term here? So the cube root of 8 is 2, and the cube root of x is x cubed is just going to be x. And then now you say, let me just erase here and create a space so that you can see what I'm writing here. So remember, the first thing, we open brackets, small and big. So we say the cube root there is going to be 2x, and the cube root here is going to be how much? Remember, the cube root of 27 is just going to be 3. But now the cube root is going to divide with that exponent. You're just going to have what? Y squared. So the 6 divided by 3 is just going to be how much? It's going to be 2. So we keep the sign as it is. We have negative as our sign there. And then now what we write on this bracket here, we always square the first term. So this is 2x squared. So it's just going to be 4x squared. And therefore, what do? We say now, this first term multiplied by the second term, we have 2x multiplied by negative 3y squared, which is going to be negative 6xy squared. But now when we put it here, we change the sign of that. So this is going to be what? It's going to be positive 6xy squared. And therefore, the last thing that we do, we square the last term. So now what is this? If we square the last term, negative 3 squared is going to be 9. And therefore, if we say y squared, is going to be what? It's going to be y to the power of 4. Okay, so that means now we have factorized our 2 cubes. So now the next thing that we need to check is that, okay, is it possible for us to factorize on this side here? Okay, is there any way if we can factorize this? Let's see. I don't know if this is possible to factorize. But if we can't factorize it, therefore our answer ends there. But if we can factorize it, we will have to open 2 brackets and factorize it. I think this problem here can be factorized because this is a trinomial. Okay, so now how do we factorize a trinomial? Let me just show you. We're just going to say, okay, this one here, nothing will happen. It's just going to be 2x minus 3y squared. So we're going to open 2 brackets because we see now this is a trinomial. And we're going to say now, how can we write 4x squared? We're going to write 4x squared by saying what? 2x multiplied by 2x. And the last thing we're going to do is going to say, okay, what are the factors of this 9y to the power of 4? So it's going to be what? It's going to be 1 multiplied by 9. Remember now, we still have y squared and y squared that will have to multiply, okay? We know about that. But now let's just focus on the coefficient here. This is 1 and 9. Those are the factors. And then the other factors will be 3 and 3. So now we check at the side. The sign is positive. That means now we look at the factors that when we add them, they give us the middle term, which is 6. So but now this is going to be 3y squared and 3y squared because of this y to the power of 4. So this is just going to be 3y squared and 3y squared. So now this can really factorize. Okay, so now the last thing that you do what? You say now, okay, the last sign is positive, so that means you're going to have the same sign. So this is going to be positive and positive. So you can check now, if you just simplify this, will it get you back to the answer there? I bet it will definitely get you back to the answer. So that is how you will factorize 2.4. So now let us look at the last question, whereby we have to simplify the following fractions here. So now when we simplify the fractions, what we do, we normally see if we can factorize. If we can't factorize, we take out the lowest common denominator. So but now what is our lowest common denominator? Our lowest common denominator is the number that is common in both our denominator. So in this case, nothing is common. So we're just going to say our lowest common denominator is both denominators multiplied together. 5 multiplied by 3. And then what we do, we just write that denominator down, which is 5 multiplied by 3. And then we come to the first term to say now, at the top we are just saving 3x plus 7. So but now this 5 here will cancel the 5 on what? On the LCD, and then what is left will multiply with what is at the top of the first term. So now the 3 will multiply with what? With the 3x plus 7. Okay, so now we will have to move to the second term to say now, okay, on the second term, on the denominator we have 3, so we are remaining with 5. So the 5 will multiply with what is at the top of that fraction, which is just what? Which is just x minus 2. But now this 5 here, which is going to be negative because of that side, then we say now it multiplies with x minus 2. So that is how you would simplify the fraction. So if you have done that step, then you are almost close to getting done with this. Okay, so now what you do, you just simplify the top. This will multiply with that, and that will multiply with that. So 3 multiplied by 3x, that's going to be 9x. Then 3 multiplied by 7, I think that's going to be 21. And then now we say negative 5 multiplied by x, that's going to be negative 5x. Negative 5x multiplied by negative 2, that's going to be positive 10. This is all divided by what? 5 multiplied by 3, that's just going to be 15. So now if we simplify this out, we're just going to add the like terms. 9 minus 5. 9 minus 5, that's going to give us 4x. And then we have 21 plus 10, which is just going to be 31. And then we all divided by 15. So this will be the final answer for our first question. So that is how we simplify. So now if we move on and look at this problem here, we are going to do the very same thing. Remember now, the first step is for us to do what? To factorize where we can. So you need to know how to factorize different numbers. So now let's see if we can factorize here at the top and at the bottom and then at the top and then at the bottom. Just factorize where we can. So now at the top here, we are just having a trinomial. So remember, if you have a trinomial, how do you factorize it? You factorize it by opening two brackets. And the first step that you do is that you say, how can I write the x squared? I can write x squared by saying x multiplied by x. And then I'm going to say, okay, what is my last term? My last term is what? Is 2. So I'm going to say, what are the factors of 2? Is 1 and 2. But now if this side is negative, I'm looking for the factors that when I subtract them, I get the middle term, which is just 1 there. So already I can see now 2 and 1, when I subtract them, they're going to give me 1. So I'm just going to put them 1 and 2. But now because this is minus, the middle sign, which is negative, will be on the bigger number. So that is how you will simplify or factorize that. So but now if we look at the bottom here, what we have is what? Is a difference of 2 squares. So but now how do you factorize a difference of 2 squares? Remember, when you have a difference of 2 squares, you factorize it by opening two brackets. So after you open two brackets, you say now, okay, what is the square root of the first term, which is x squared? It's just going to be x. And then what is the square root of 9? That is going to be 3. And then you just repeat that x and 3. Then you put plus and minus. Then you are done with factorizing that bottom part. Okay, so now if you have the division sign here, make sure you change the division sign to a multiplication sign. So now if you write the division as multiplication, what was at the bottom will come at the top, and what was at the top will go at the bottom. So let's just change that first. We're going to say, okay, the x squared will come at the top, and then we have plus 3x, all divided by what? By the x squared minus 4 there. Okay, and then now we have now the multiplication here. But now at the top here, can we factorize? Is there any way we can factorize this? Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to open two brackets and see if we can factorize that trinomial. So we open two brackets. We say what? We say now, how can we write the x squared? We can write the x squared by saying x multiplied by x. But now we're going to look for the factors of the last term, which is 1 multiplied by 4 and 2 multiplied by 2. So now we're going to look at which factors that when we add them, because the sign there next to the last term is positive, when we add them, they give us the value of the middle term, which is 4. So now when you say 2 plus 2 is going to give you 4. So those are the factors that we select, 2 and 2. And then if the last sign is positive, that means both our sign must be the same. They must take the sign of the middle term, which is positive, positive. So we have factorized there at the top. At the bottom here, can we factorize? Yes, we can take out a common factor. So the common factor is x here. So this will just be what? X squared divided by x, that's going to be x. And then x divided by x is going to be positive 1. So now the last thing that we have not factorized is this one here, because we had to do what? We had to just change it first to become multiplication here. So that is very much important. Remember, you change the division to multiplication. Don't forget that. Okay, so now let me just drop down everything as it is. We have what? We have x. We have x plus 1 into x minus 2 all divided by x plus 3 into x minus 3. And then now we have multiplication. So if you look at the top here, can we factorize? Yes, we can take out a common factor, which is x. So if we take out the common factor, which is x, we're just going to say x squared divided by x, that is going to be x. 3x divided by x, that is going to be 3. Okay. So now if we look at the bottom, can we factorize? Yes, we can factorize, because this is a difference of two squares. So if it's a difference of two squares, we open two brackets and we say the square root of x squared is x, the square root of 4 is 2, so we write x and 2 again, and we put plus and minus. And therefore we're just going to say multiply. This part we have already factorized, so it's plus that, x plus 2 all divided by x into x plus 1. So now if we have all the multiplications here, what is at the bottom will cancel out with what is at the top if they are the same. So now if you look at this here, this thing here is the same as that, and it's top and bottom, so they cancel out. Okay, then if you look at this one here, is the same as that, so they cancel out, is top and bottom. Then if we look at this one here, is the same as that, so they cancel out because it's top and bottom. And then if you also look at this will cancel out with that, because that is top and bottom. So all the tops and bottom have cancelled out, and then we also have to cancel this x here is at the top and that x is at the bottom. So what we are left with at the top is just what? It's just x plus 2, and at the bottom is x minus 3. So therefore, our answer will be what? Will be equal to, at the top we have x plus 2, at the bottom we have x minus 3. So that is how we would simplify that problem. So that's your final answer, and you get 8 marks for that. Okay, so that is a great question. And then this is all for this video. Thank you very much.